So, I'm Alistair Christie from LearnDelphi.tv, and I'm here with Holger Flick, fellow Embarcadero MVP. So,
hi, Alistair. How are you?
Yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself. I'm good.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, we're fellow MVPs for quite a while now, and I have to be honest because of the internet. The internet came later for me in my Delphi time, so I don't even know when you entered the Delphi world. I entered the Delphi world when there was no internet, so it was way early.
Yeah, ditto. So the first version of Delphi I used was version 3.
Yeah, for me it was version 2. Version 1 I was too young, and version 2 I was still in the time where your parents had to buy the stuff that you wanted to have on your computer, because back in the day there was no community edition or free edition. So what I did, I'll always remember it. I called up Borland. The people are still there, just under the Embarcadero name now, and basically said, "Hey, I'm a student. Can you do something for me?" And back in the day, there was this Borland Pascal 7 package for students that basically cost like $100 or something in Germany. It had like this giant book with it. It was Borland Pascal 7. And if you purchased that, you were eligible to get an update, because I would have never been able to afford like a Delphi 2 standard full license. So because I wanted to have the database features, that was also a big deal back then with Paradox and DBase. And that was really important to me. Yeah, because I don't know what you did first, but I did Clipper first. So Clipper and DBase, I mean, that was the reason why we switched to Delphi in the first place, I think, because we wanted to have database support on Windows applications that was easy to use.
Yeah, no, I was previously. I mean, I sort of dabbled in programming. Turbo Pascal 5.5. It's probably about 15 or something like that when I was playing with that. And and then sort of after finished my degree, I got a job, and they were using Delphi, so I learned that. And that was quite good. So working for a small company developing software for the real estate industry here in New Zealand.
Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite a long time ago now.
But real estate certainly must have picked up, because I think I saw the name, and I immediately recognized the name of the city you're located in because of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So Wellington, I think, right? So
yeah. So
real estate must be basically very good in that area. Yeah, as I just explained to you before starting the recording, I had to leave the usual spot in the office because of social distancing. My wife, who is a teacher, is also having a phone conference right now, teaching kids, so we can't be in the same space at the same time. So I'm basically downstairs and picked a spot where we have good lighting to record this session. And also, this is more or less a premiere. I only did like one video session ever, like on a podcast way back. But usually, in all my videos, I rather not do picture. I think voice is enough. So this is definitely new to me.
I've kind of dabbled in the video. I mean, I've done a few videos of me, just using either a cell phone, and I borrowed a Osmo camera, which has got a gimbal on it, so when you walk around it reduces the wobbliness, and that works quite amazingly well. And I've been using a webcam occasionally. I'm sitting in front of a window, so if I record, so if I'm sitting in front of, sitting in front of a window, so I get daylight. So if it's during the day, I'm lit, but at night it's quite dark where I'm sitting. So I should probably set up some lights and have a decent.
I can see that, and we can see you just fine recording the video. So
yeah,
all good.
I'm a bit worried, a little bit overexposed actually with the me being in bright light.
I'm not to hurt both of our feelings, but I think people watching the stream are mostly interested in the Delphi programming we do.
Oh, indeed.
Otherwise, you would have picked a different career. I don't know.
Yeah. So you've just published a book. You were telling me.
Yes, actually, I cheat a little bit. I published 2 books because first, and via coincidence, I have them right here. So let me give you the short run of the story. The story is in here, but back in the day, I still lived in Germany, and Germany is pretty close to Belgium. This thing is worldwide, so I have to give people some geography how close things are, because all my friends here in the state, they don't realize how close the Delphi community in Europe is to each other. I mean, for example, Bobswart is in Netherlands. It's like a 1 hour drive from where I am. And Bruno, if you drive at the right time of day, is like 2.5 hours from Germany where I live. So as we were already operating on videos and other kinds of evangelism, I drove to him one of the days because he called a couple of days before that and said like, hey, if you have some time, I'd like to talk to you. And then when we, after the usual work day, when we talked about all things that were coming up in the day, he basically, and he actually used the wording, and the wording is also in the book. He basically said like, so I'm just going to tell you what you're going to see now. If you talk about it to anyone, I'll have to kill you. So what he showed me back then was, he basically showed me a form, a Delphi form, and he dropped components that looked like normal Delphi components, VCL components, like a button, an edit control, list box, and then you double click the button, you could implement like what should happen if you click the button and all that kind of stuff. And then at that time, you still had to use the command line to invoke the compiler. And with one keystroke, this Delphi application became a web application that looked exactly like what was designed on that form inside of the IDE. That was all inside of the IDE already. So I was pretty much blown away. And then at the time, he explained to me that this Delphi application was completely converted into JavaScript, and then you were able to build web applications in Delphi that are only run on the client as a JavaScript application. And that was the start for me into the world of, I hope you can see it in the camera. For me, it was the start of TMS web core world, which was the name that they then decided upon. So the book, the decision was made that evening that I basically was going to write a book because I was so blown away about the technology. That was back in 2017. It took quite a while because the problem with technology, even with Delphi, is like if you start writing a book, the technology still keeps on giving, developing, and especially for TMS Web Core, which was such a new technology at the time. They kept developing, and kept expanding it. And of course, I didn't want to publish a book that was old at the time that it was published. So that was the most challenging part, And so this book basically gets you started and gets you into the way of thinking as a VCL desktop developer. It transfers you over into the world of building web applications. So some people who already might have developed web applications might be like, oh, why does he explain to us what JSON is? But from working with other customers, things like JSON and HTTP and requests and response, it's not all 100% clear yet. So this book goes from building the very first example Hello World application with TMS Web Core over to the final chapter, which is basically putting all things together, building an example application which accesses the database from a web client through a web service. And you learn basically that it's fully reproducible because you can download the database from the internet. And then you learn how to build the web server. You learn about other technologies that you can use building the web service. TMS Fixed Data is another product that they offer that makes things very easy. So this book is really for people who are interested in building web applications with Delphi, but also for people who already have built web applications with other frameworks, but have deep knowledge of the VCL, because I think they will be feeling right at home. And also topics like responsive web design, options are giving, and also how you can design your applications. Because as I said, we started the project in 2017. The first release was early 2018. we've gotten a lot of feedback over the time. And the primary thing was that they saw the demo applications that were built, and you yourself know if you have a VCL label and edit field, it doesn't really look like a web application. So the book also introduces all the ways how you can design your forms to use, for example, Bootstrap, which is a big JavaScript framework to design your forms or web pages with column design, grid design. And then also how you can basically separate the tasks, how it is in big companies. For example, I don't know a single developer in a big company who does web design. So you can, with TMS Web Core, you can actually tell a web designer, hey, do your web design and give me some areas where I can put my stuff. And you can fully concentrate on the application development, and your web application is basically placed inside of the other HTML tags in another HTML design, because your application will be all web. You know, there's no server dependency or anything. You will get a JavaScript file, and tell me if I'm going to verbose here, because that is another thing. What I have heard is that people have been criticizing, like, why would you convert everything to JavaScript? You know, we have Delphi. Why wouldn't you write JavaScript right away? And the thing is, like, on the one hand, you can migrate. If you already have your source code in Delphi, you can use that right away, because all the RTL and many other class libraries are already available. But the key thing to consider is you also have a lot of stuff in the JavaScript world. And TMS Web Core makes it possible to call these things from Delphi without migrating the code to Delphi or to Pascal or anything. So you can directly use existing JavaScript. That might be another software team that you have in your company. And that makes it very powerful. You know, so, and integrating existing class libraries is also very, very easy. So there's no negative aspect, in my opinion, that it's being converted to JavaScript, because, and that is also covered in great detail in the books. You can always jump, as I call it the Pascal world. You can always jump into the JavaScript world to do things that you usually wouldn't be able to do with Delphi.
Yeah, indeed. I think it's very exciting now with all this cross-platform technology for Delphi.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've got now, gone from, Windows only to the Mac and iOS and Android, and you can, write your source code once and have it work on desktop and mobile, and the two different mobile platforms. You can run it on your sort of back-end server with, RAD server, or implementing your own web server type framework. And this web core allows you to write sort of front end web stuff as well, which is
let me elaborate on that a little bit. So the book was first published in German, and so I wrote it in German, and then I translated it after publication. I published it early March, and then the coronavirus hit the world, and we were basically in lockdown here in the United States. So I had plenty of time to translate it, and this is what the English version looks like. And you already see here it's already not for resale. So this is actually the proof copy that I've gotten, and because of the existing pandemic, it has taken them several weeks, I would say, to get this to me. Usually Amazon is pretty quick when it comes to these. So I have the proof copy right here, and just this morning I basically authorized Amazon to go live, and that is like to focus on the book. I decided to go with Amazon as the publisher because they have a worldwide net of stores. So if you're in New Zealand, I'm quite certain there's a store in Australia or somewhere, or even in New Zealand, Amazon.nz maybe, I don't know.
No, there is a, yeah. It's one in Australia, but yeah.
That's better for you still than ordering it in Germany from a publisher in Germany, for example. So that really makes it easy. And I'm a little bit old-fashioned, which you can see from these. These are actually two ball pens. they were actually this long when I started the book project. This is just for the English translation. So I had the whole book project took like 6-7 pencils, because I am very, very old-fashioned when it comes to that. I print the pages and I do it all on paper and make my notes. And so this is a work of love, of course, and I always wanted it to be a book, because I wanted to have something in front of the computer that I can go through for everybody to follow up on the examples, make it reproducible. That was the main goal of this. And with the TMS Web Core books, there were so many basics to cover that there is one whole chapter in the end, which you can really take and like follow on how you build your own stuff. But there's also a lot of stuff for reference, in addition to the documentation, especially for German people, because the whole documentation, everything is in English, obviously. So it was really the first thing that was published in German in a long time with regards to Delphi and the TMS product. So that was the main intent, to do German first and then English. And but it still, you will have to read the documentation. I just don't think that I just translated the documentation or anything. Mm-hmm. It's what I did do. I picked up a lot of the examples from the product itself, because from my experience, a lot of people do not open the demo applications, or if they open the demo applications, they don't know how to start. They don't find the access point, like where to start to understand the content. So there's quite some examples in the book that basically say, hey, this is the example, you find it on the basics and form design, open this. So you're able to follow through easily reading the book. But I was very careful, as it's a book that you basically take on vacation with you, probably, and you don't have a computer in hand, you can still reproduce or follow on without having a computer typing the whole time. So that was also important to me. The only criticism so far was not having a digital edition. That was not my choice alone, because if you publish with Amazon and they do all the groundwork, like the printing, the sales, the payment handling, all that kind of stuff, they basically tell you you're not allowed to publish a PDF at the same time. And for me, it was never that big of a deal, but there has been some feedback. Hey, I would not want the weight in my in my carry-on all the time if I carry it around with me. So you have to make a decision at some point, and I made the decision to make it print only. So there's those in two. But you mentioned something very interesting. I want to follow up with you because you said like TMS Web Core is web application development. The application runs in your browser, and that's what you immediately think of if you want to do like multi-platform, that the stuff runs in your browser. TMS Web Core, since version, I don't want to say anything wrong, I think 1.3 has or makes use of something that is not well known in Delphi circles. It's called the Electron framework. Have you heard of it?
No, not off the top of my head.
I mean, I hadn't heard of it either before I learned about it from TMS. It's basically a framework written in, hopefully I'm not saying something wrong, but it's a framework that gives you the ability to write a web application. And through the framework, your web application becomes a native application on certain platforms. For example, if you use QuickBooks, it's a very popular application here in the United States to do accounting and bookkeeping, or Visual Studio Code, which is a multi-platform IDE from Microsoft. They actually wrote a web application that is written in JavaScript and all their JavaScript dialects that they have, and they bundle it through the Electron framework so they can provide a Windows application, a Mac application, and a Linux application. And with TMS Web Core, you have the opportunity to do the same thing. You say, hey, I want to build an Electron web application. And that way you can deploy your applications to Linux, to Windows, to the Mac, and the user gets a real native application with an icon. The user can double click it, and that's it. So there's no feeling of a web application. Of course, and the nice thing is you code a web application, and you get the bonus that you can use the tool set of web designers if you have them in your company. Like you can do your whole form design and everything using web designer. That truly gives you the opportunity only to have one code base for all the platforms. And still, for the user, it looks like a native application because, and that's the key thing for me to consider it for production users. You have additional components like a main menu, context menu, tray icon. You have local file operations, which is like the biggest downside for me if you think of web applications. You can't access the local file system. And Electron gives you access to all these. And TMS Web Core gives you the opportunity to have Delphi classes for that. So you have like the T main menu, which is it's called the T Electron main menu, which is the main menu for Electron applications. So you end up, and it's all integrated in the IDE. So you can say, hey, I want to build my application for Linux 64-bit, and you get a binary file on your Windows system, created using the Delphi IDE, and it's like an executable for your Linux system with no like dependencies or anything. So you can really run it. I made a virtual machine Linux. You can run it.
Yes, I've not taken advantage of the Linux support in Delphi as yet. I've been meaning to play around with it. But
yeah,
likewise.
I also don't have a lot of stuff going on in Linux.
Have you done any mobile? I've played around with Android a bit, and I've got some.
Yeah, mobile. Thank you for reminding me, because mobile is just the other thing. Like web applications I've done a lot. Not a lot. I've done iOS development, and the number one, the two reasons why it became pretty difficult to do it because it's just me. I don't know how it's for you if you have a team of developers or.
No.
But the biggest problem was to support all those devices that came up later on, and Delphi really made it easy because you could design your forms in a way that they were adequate for different devices. But even Apple and a lot of app developers didn't create native applications. They went the route to do web applications. And Google, back in the day, they invented, or they basically said, hey, let's do so-called progressive web applications. I'm sure you've heard of those, which basically load into the storage of your mobile device, and you can use web applications even without an internet connection. And so you can implement applications that have the briefcase model, like the classic, you're like a package delivery person. You go to your company, you get the package, a list of the packages that you're supposed to deliver, and you deliver the packages. The web application collects all the information, like signatures and all that kind of stuff, and then you return back to the office. There you connect back to the service, and the application transfers the changes from your work that you did during the day. And that usually was not possible with web applications, of course, but with progressive web applications, that's possible. And this application type is yet another template that you can pick if you create your web core application. And you can say, hey, I want to create a PWA application, and then you get like the bonus that this application will be able to be used offline as well as online. It updates automatically, so it checks when it started if there's an online connection. Hey, is there like an update to the application available? And of course, it can be added to the home screen of your device. That again, like with the Electron for the desktop, it kind of looks like a native application on your mobile device. Like you have an icon that you can click, You no longer need to use the web browser to use the web application. It's completely abstracted from that concept. And that makes it yet another way to do cross-platform development very easy. Because then you can use the same application for Android and for iOS. And again, of course, Delphi makes this easy because the applications, the components or the controls that you can build with Delphi, they can be built in a way that they can already support things that are web specific. For example, TMS Web Core has like so-called responsive grids and responsive panels, meaning like if you start your application on a desktop, you get like 4 elements in the grid in the same row. And if you start the same application on your iPhone, you get like only 1 item in every row of your data grid, you know? So that's yet another advantage, you know? So the thing is with TMS Web Core, it's so complex. Sometimes it's overwhelming at first, but if you start with one of the applications and then start step by step building it, you see that you have always many options to build an application, and most certainly your favorite way to do things will be supported as well. Because if you can't do HTML and have never heard of cascading style sheets, you have the option to use certain panels and certain data grids that do that for you. You know, you just have to decide like, okay, if it's going to be a mobile device, this grid is only going to show 1 column. And of course, TMS provides you with default settings that make sense, but you can fine tune it. And so that is all there. And coming back to the book, that's the reason why the book is there, because my main intent was to show what options you have for the product, you know, and what application types are there, and what are the advantages of all these application types, and then going into detail, how do you really do things and what components are specifically designed for what purpose. You know, so what you don't find in the book is, for example, there's also, as I already mentioned, edit control. You won't find the table with all the properties of the edit control and all the methods. You'll find lots of examples that use the edit control, but it's not a reference like the product, because that's what the product documentation is for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So,
did you find much had changed with TMS Web Core between your German and English editions? You know, was there anything you thought, oh, I should probably include extra, or?
It's funny that you asked that, because actually I did add one tiny little bit to make things clearer. I added a couple, like 3-4 passages. And but in general, I stayed away from it because I didn't want to make the German users feel bad, and they had to order a book that wasn't as up to date as the other one. You know, that's why I'm so happy that they're being published so close to each other. You know, but there's 2-3 passages that, and of course, the English version. People don't realize this, but like Germany has a completely different keyboard. So there is a chapter in the German book which has a table which key is what. For example, Germans don't have control on the keyboard. They have like the German translation for control. You know, and so there's like these things in there that don't need to be in the English version. Or other things is like German developers don't realize what a property row gap does, because a lot of German developers don't know what a gap is, unless they might have been in the United Kingdom driving to being on the tube, you know, mind the gap please, you know, then you realize that the gap is like the distance between 2 columns or 2 rows or whatever. And so the German book, if there's like a property name or whatever, I give additional hints, or basically have a footnote like this is derived from the English word blah blah blah, you know. But
Okay.
those things obviously are not in the English one. And of course, even though people might not think so if they hear me talk, because I'm always too verbose, as you notice now, English is much shorter than German. So, so the big difference is that I was able to increase the font size of the font by 1 point. So the books are the same page size because English is shorter, but it's still the books have the same basically number of pages. So if people want to like that, especially German people, like, hey, did he add more content in the English book? Because otherwise they would never be the same page size. No, I increased in certain occasions. I increased the text size so it's easier to read, and that's basically all I changed. And I mean, we talked about this a couple of days ago. Like the amount of work writing a book, especially if it's like about basics, does not compare what you think at first. Like if you write, it's much easier to write about examples and describe what you did in these examples. But describing a web framework for people that are used to building desktop applications takes a lot of time and building all the tables. And then even though, and this is why I know that I use code completion a lot, even though I know the VCL inside out, but still there's so many methods that you don't really know the spelling of, if you're honest. And if you write a book, you have to get it exactly right with lowercase, uppercase. And for example, border style, do you know what the constants are called? So these things.
BS,
yes.
single and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then it's so we have a sizable tool window. So is it style tool win, or is it sizable tool win, or is it size tool?
Yeah.
And these kind of things take a huge amount of time. So basically, there's tables in that book that took like 2-3 hours to do, and it's like half a page. And then the proofreading part is yet another experience that's out of this world, because you need to read this stuff again and again and again and again, and then you realize, oh, I made a mistake here. You need to add references and all that stuff. So the amount I thought of time I thought I would need was significantly longer. But the first, what's the saying? The proverb, the first time it's the hardest, or something like that. I don't know. But I can really say that all of this experience helped me a lot to get the translation out much quicker than I expected. You know, I haven't had the chance to talk to Mark Lucantu yet, because he's written so many books, and it would have been nice to be able to talk to him on a developer event anytime in the future. But as things look now, there won't be any developer events in person in the near future.
Indeed. Yeah. So I don't know how the situation is like in the US at the moment, but here in New Zealand, we're basically locked down for 4 weeks. We've been 4 or 5 days into it, and they say 4 weeks, but it's probably going to be quite a bit longer than that. So
yeah, we've here in Florida, the governor has been pretty quick. He closed everything down 2 weeks ago. Of course, closed down and like making people stay at home and not go to the beach. I mean, that was heavily reported in the media that people still went to the beach and stuff like that because it's public, you know. So it was difficult to get that all under control. But so the whole U.S. had these guidelines for 15 days, and that ends today. And but yesterday it was already announced that they were going to extend that until April 30th. So not 4 weeks like you. And I honestly can't think that in 4 weeks we just, go back to normal as if nothing happened,
Yeah.
I think especially if you will go into shopping malls, you'll realize that huge amount or a huge percentage of the places aren't there anymore. That will be another impact that we'll see.
Yeah, the government here has provided a large sort of economic package to help keep people paid and keep businesses going and that. But that's not something that's sustainable long term if this goes on for months and months and months. And yeah, so it's very worrying what the world is going to be like over the next while.
Also for us as developers, we are safe at home. We work from home.
Indeed.
One of the teammates made a joke. I'm not going to say who it is, but he basically said like, the last 2 weeks I've been at home, sometimes watching the kids. I've not been going outside. I went shopping every 2 weeks. So we're also under lockdown. But actually, I've been doing this for the last 6 years, ever since I became full professional developer. So the impact that we'll see is, and I'm already seeing it, that software development projects are basically being pushed into the back, because especially if they already have a product and it's a migration or it's like a modernization, they're basically going to say, oh, we need money for something else right now, and so even though, and that's actually the reason why the book is so quick, because you're home 24/7. You can't even go out to the movies in the evening, so it's and I think the impact that we'll see as software developers, because projects will get scarce if the economy doesn't start back up.
Yeah, as developers, at least we have the option of being able to work at home. A lot of tradespeople, builders and plumbers and things like that, not able to do anything but sort of critical things. So yeah, if you're working in retail, there's pretty much you're you can't do that from home. And then here in New Zealand, they're the courier companies are only delivering critical things as well, so which food and that kind of stuff. Whereas even if I ordered your book, I wouldn't be able to get it.
Amazon's still working. So
yeah, but
it just takes longer.
It might get shipped to New Zealand, but whether it would get to me is another question entirely. So yeah.
I didn't say the specifics. You can't see it right on camera. These are 300, and the English is 360, and the German is 352 something. So lots of content, and it covers basics and all the different application types: client server, web services, responsive web design, and all that. So that's good. And
it's definitely going to go into my wish list.
Thank you for this. That's just the other thing. And I don't know if you already written books or
no. So yeah, I'm just writing my first one. Of course, I've done a large number of videos.
I didn't want to say anything. I didn't know if that was under NDA that you told me.
No, well, I've mentioned it in the past, but so I've got 2 books in the works. The first one, the content is probably about 95% done. I'll say 95%. Give it in air quotes. And it's basically on being more productive with Delphi. So it's a lot of all the knowing from going from the start, knowing how to touch type, knowing all the keyboard shortcuts, knowing how to use for instance the class explorer. If you're wanting to be able to manipulate classes and things like that, you can do that visually if you want. That might be more efficient than doing it typing code, because it'll create the interface and implementation for you automatically.
I know that one. Control-Shift-C. I know that one.
Oh yeah, class completion is and it's the Control-J code completion and the code templates. I just, can save you a phenomenal amount of time in terms of typing if you familiarize yourself, particularly if you're writing like properties and things like that, because
that will be on my wish list.
Yeah, it takes a long time to, you're writing your property, your getter, your setter, and all that kind of stuff.
Prop F, prop RW, and those
prop GS, and then you can use the code completion on the class to be able to, you go control space within the class and then select the method you want to implement. For instance, rather than having to do all that typing or copy and pasting and that kind of thing. So knowing all those sorts of things just save you a phenomenal amount of time in typing, and if you get used to taking advantage of those. And there's all the sort of third-party plugins as well, such as GExperts, CNMac, which is my sort of preferred sort of IDE plugin I have installed almost everywhere. And Model Maker Code Explorer is now free. Which is
he took over, which is good.
Yeah, and I used to use it quite a long time ago, and I got reasonably proficient at using some of its capabilities. And yeah, it's one of those things that if you invest the time, you can be incredibly productive. Because you really, I can touch type probably about sort of 70 words a minute, which is okay. It's not great, but any
code type 70 if I know correctly. So
yeah, I keep meaning to try and get myself up above the 100 mark at some point. That would be quite good. But yeah, 70 is good. But certainly, if you don't have to type it, it means so much faster.
So that's actually a great book we needed for a long time in the Delphi community. Because,
no one's written one. So
the last one that I know in this kind of field that touched the IDE and its features was Mastering Delphi 7 by Cantu. I don't know, 2005. I don't know if those chapters were still in there, because the last ones that Marco wrote, they were all focused on the language and the language features, and like everything else, like books from Nick Hodges, they all focus on the language, like dependency injection, coding in Delphi. It wasn't anything about the IDE really in there, so I think it'll be great. And the other one was, because they said it's 2.
The second one is about writing better code. So,
I definitely need that one.
Yeah. So it's, but it concludes a lot of tools and things to check your code, and that's say Fix Insight, which was from TMS.
Just wanted to mention that because I wouldn't be an evangelist if I wouldn't have put it
indeed
in somehow.
And it's a great tool. Pascal Analyzer is quite brilliant. It gives you so much information, and they say that even things like the what can happen is over time the uses clauses can get rather bloated.
Oh yeah,
and that can basically that slows down the IDE. It makes the code completion quite painful, and compilation can take longer because there's more code that needs to be analyzed. And so you have all these uses that aren't actually being used. So you're not using any functions or anything from the units. And so you can use something like the Pascal Analyzer has a uses analysis. Will tell you which things you can remove and which you can remove from the interface to the implementation section, which is quite good.
That's helpful. And does it do that for you, or do you have to do it manually?
You have to do it manually. Okay. Whereas if you install CNPack, it has a one that does it automatically for you. But there are a whole bunch of caveats. You can go wrong quite badly by removing units that even aren't used, because there might be resources that are included. So you might have images for buttons and things like that, and then suddenly,
buttons look quite differently.
Yeah, or you get runtime, crashes in obscure places and things like that. So I've gone wrong a few times on removing units that should have stayed. So there's a few tricks on keeping those.
Fire deck is also pretty tricky when it comes to that. And
they have so many units. Yeah.
Thinking of the book that Kerry Jensen wrote on fire deck, when I was in tech review on that, I said like, "Hey, are you sure you still need that unit there?" And he's like, "Yep, you do." And I said like, "Well, it worked for me without it. Well, try this." And then I tried it, and he's like, "See?" And the compiler was fine, everything was fine, but if you didn't have that unit in there, because there was some kind of resource, as you just mentioned, that was built into it, it basically worked at first, but because of dynamic linking somehow, it basically, for some functions, and those mistakes were hidden. You know, it was not like that you started the application, like if you forgot to, back in the day when you still needed to add these wait cursor component or whatever it was called. But where you got the message like, hey, this component is missing, please drop it on the form. But these were like deep, nasty mistakes. Like you could work with it and you didn't even realize it was missing, you know. And so I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's like, oh yeah, we can get rid of that. And all function values are incorrect all of a sudden, and you don't know why.
Yeah. Yeah, those things can be hard to track down, because it doesn't fail when you make the change. So you make the change, it all works. You commit that change, and then sometime later you're wondering, you've changed something else, and suddenly this weird unrelated thing is broken, and you're thinking that change has caused the error.
Especially Delphi with the uses clause and the namespaces that they introduced. I still don't feel 100% comfortable with them. So even though, when were they introduced? I think Delphi 2007, 2009, that kind of time.
Quite a long time ago, yeah.
Quite a long time ago. And I still feel at odds with them somehow. And also these tools, they say, hey, get rid of that unit, you get rid of it. And, it's just because of our unit not found or whatever, some alias that has gotten removed, and it's tricky. So yeah, great if the Pascal analyzer catches those, because that's very helpful. Especially if you, of course, we're good designers. We never just try things out, but honestly, we all do. So you drop this component on the form and try if it does what you want it to do. You realize it didn't really do what you wanted, or you don't need it. So you drop another control, and guess what? The units from the other control are still in there. And that's exactly the case that you described is going to slow down compilation significantly. The classic for me is you have a main form and you build something. They say, it's gonna be quick. So you drop your FireDeck connection, you drop your FireDeck query, and that's it. And all of a sudden you're like, you could need, maybe I do a second form which shows the data in a different way, or maybe I add a chart which shows the data just in another different way. So let's move the connection and the query into a data module. So you do that, but your main form has about, it feels like 150 units that are referring to FireDeck, and that's exactly the case you referred to, I think.
Yeah, I find Indy's quite bad for that as well. It's quite confusing. There's so many supplemental units required. Like if you put a HTTP ID HTTP component on there, you have about like 6 or 7 units that get added.
Yeah, and the best thing is if you remove the units and you forget one of them, and you press Control S to save the unit, boom, they're back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is a good thing to have, But the one thing maybe that's in your books, like the one thing I miss, and it's one of the most wanted features in Delphi for me. Just recently, I made a personal list of mine where I wrote down like the 2 or 3 things that I would die for to have in Delphi. Number 1 was I know which type it is. For example, I know that in order to do a certain thing in a framework, I need this class type. And I know, and I can't use code completion because I don't know which unit it is that the class type is in. So I basically know what the class is called, but I don't know which unit to use. That's always the biggest thing for me. I don't know how it is for you. And the IDE doesn't give you anything. Back in the day, you could press Control-Shift-A, which was like find unit thing.
Find unit. Yep.
And but ever since the introduction of namespaces and the switch back from being an IDE that had like .NET plus just native, I mean, people tend to forget that Delphi was able to produce .NET applications at one point. And so there was a lot of stuff in there that worked well. And right now, that doesn't work reliably anymore, just for the reason that you just mentioned. Because as soon as your users clause gets too blown up, it is not able to find the data type reliably anymore. And that would be my number one feature to make me quicker. If I know that I need the TX data operation context, and I can guarantee you, I've already forgotten which units it's in. So I open up the last project that I've worked on, I know that I have the context in, and I copy the users clause. So that is the number one feature for me to be more efficient. But I guarantee you, if I have the Pascal analyzer that you just mentioned, fine unit would work. Because it wouldn't run into these units that are not really needed.
I was trying to think. There's a class browser.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Does that?
It's included in what you just mentioned in the Code Explorer. But I'm very privileged that I have obviously access to all of TMS's frameworks. So if you index those, it takes quite a long time for the model, for the Code Explorer to build all the index files for all the classes. And obviously they change daily. So that is, for me, not a good solution because the indexing takes too long.
Okay, I thought there was one in Delphi, and I think it only works with units you have open. So,
no, it actually picks everything up. It's quite good.
Oh, okay.
So it's really, really good. I mean, it goes into your browsing path or whatever, and it really works nicely. So yeah, but so you good code, Pascal analyzer, and that kind of stuff. And what else do you do? Like go into like dependency injection interfaces or
yeah, I mentioned basically it's what I didn't want to write a 500-page book, which would be, if you're going into any detail about these things.
Start with 360. That's plenty.
Yeah. So basically, I'll give an introduction to dependency injection, for instance, and then say, go read Nick Hodges' book if you're wanting to know more.
Yes.
So that's kind of the route I've taken. I'm not going into too much detail on each topic, but I want to introduce the reader to as many concepts as possible, mm-hmm. so that they're at least familiar with them to be able to perhaps get started, and then if they want to get more advanced, then they go off and read a more substantial book mm-hmm. on that topic. So as
far as I know, there's no design. Is there a design patterns book for Delphi?
There is. Yeah.
There is. Right?
So I'm going to probably murder this name. Primož Gabrieljic, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Design. Design.
I wanted to make sure that I don't only push my own books, because there's another great one that has been published recently. I do the same thing that you do. I basically, TMS has so many great products out there. There's also object relational mapping, and I
mm-hmm.
refer to that book as well. So this is from John Karaklis. Same kind of problem with the name. He's Greek, as far as I know. So or Curaclus or Curaclus. So I never know where this.
I think I purchased that book. I generally just purchase every Delphi book that gets published.
You do the same as I am. I do the same thing because I have Primus's books. I have all of them.
Yeah, so I'm about 80% done with the head for design patterns book.
Exactly. First design patterns is
it's the like classic book. Which is kind of the first book I read on design patterns.
I never read the traditional Gang of Four book either.
No, I think I purchased an electronic version of it. I had a bit of a flick through it, but I think there are much better books now.
That's when you realize you're old, by the way. If you say, hey, have you read the GOF book? And they're like, no, it's not called GOF, it's called GOT, it's Game of Thrones. I said, no, it's Gang of Four. That's when you realize you're old.
Because it's like that book is like 20-something years old now, isn't it? It's
the Game of Thrones book.
No, the Gang of Four book. Yeah.
The other one, too. I mean, the Game of Thrones is also very old. People don't realize.
Yeah, I noticed the Pragmatic Programmers had their 20th anniversary edition released recently, which I grabbed the Audible, the audiobook version of it from Audible, and listened to that, and I thought, it was really good. I couldn't be bothered reading it again from the print version, but I've read it a couple of times. But maybe I'll get the anniversary edition and have a read of that. But it's some of these books are actually getting, and they're still relevant, but sort of 20-year-old books. The
Kerry Jensen's Client Dataset book is still a very good resource if you do in-memory data tables with Delphi. I would say there's nothing better to read. I mean, it's and it's just a different component now. I mean, with the FD mem table that we have, and there's differences, and Kerry points out the differences between the two in his Fire Deck book, obviously. But just like us, he wouldn't repeat what he already did in another book. So he's actually referring to that book as well. So and I like you. I buy all the Delphi books because I think Delphi as a language is so underappreciated. Because I don't know if you had that time in your life where for me it was I went to college and everything was like no language, I mean, we had a crazy computer science professor who didn't even want us to have a computer. He said like all you need is a pencil and paper, so that was a crazy person. But it was all Java back in the day, and I still stayed with Delphi, and then when I went to another college to do my PhD thesis, they had all the licenses for Microsoft, and I wasn't allowed to because it was all, money was given by partners, so you can't use, basically you have to use what they give you. So I had some time with .NET and Visual Studio and all that kind of stuff during that time. And the number one reason for me coming back to Delphi is the speed and the simplicity to get things done, and being able to make changes 4 weeks later, 2 months later, 3 months later without throwing the whole thing away. Because the implementation that I did in, 2010, 2011 for my PhD thesis is written in frameworks that are already deprecated like 3 years afterwards. I did some stuff with, just think about like we just mentioned, object relational mapping. Just think about the pure amount of frameworks that Microsoft published in the last couple of years. Entity framework, then it was code first, then it was model based, then it was model based again, then it was code first again, then it was a mix, then it was this, and then to make things worse, it was like 4.0, 4.5, 5, 6, and then all of a sudden you had a core in there somewhere, and then it was like lower version numbers again, and then lower core 3.5 worked differently than high. So at that point, it was for me like, no, I mean, have you started a recent version of Visual Studio? I mean, it's like file, new C# project. That's easy, you know, and then like, okay, well, what kind of user interface do you want? Do you want the WinForms project, which has been called deprecated 20 years ago, but we still offer it, and it's still the number one, you know? And then you get another combo box, and if you list that, it's like, I don't want to exaggerate here, but it was at least 10 to 20 items in the list. What kind of .NET framework do you want to use? You know, it was like a list of like, and then you have, to these 20, you have like another 50. What is the target operating system? What is your operating system? And then you need to do it's ridiculous. It has gotten to the point where I, as a one-man developer, cannot handle the amount of work that is involved in order to stay up to date. Because I don't know what framework has which language features and which basically .NET framework fits what other framework. You know, their ORM solution, their user interface solution, their this, their that. And it goes on with web application, web services. You simply need to read a book every day in order to know what fits to what. You know, and 2 weeks later, for example, the web service solution, the last one that I used was called Main API, I think, and which is, by the way, supported by TMS Web Core if you want to use web services from that. So they changed it, like all method headers had different custom attributes. All custom attributes were renamed. All base classes were renamed that you had to derive from. So it wasn't minor changes. It was significant changes that you had to do every 3 to 4 months. You know, and people complain, oh, there's not much happening in Delphi. And I got to be honest with you, I'd rather have like a decent feature set, which expands the language, you know, that you don't have, but keeps the language stable without you having to change everything. I'm not exaggerating here. It was really like every 6 months where I had to rewrite everything because base classes were changed, components weren't there anymore, and also things like you had to migrate your projects inside of the IDE and stuff like that. Things that the Delphi developers don't even think of, you know, because it just works. I mean, Delphi, it has been just so excellent in its non-breaking changes. You know, you can still take Delphi 1 applications and compile them in the latest version of Delphi. It is frustrating sometimes. I agree on that. Sometimes the community has some heated discussions. And why is that not being changed? You know, because it's so stupid. You know, and but in general, it's really a good decision to not make major changes that break your code. I agree with that. Yeah, indeed. You know, and also the things do get broken. I mean, I've had to change. You get like events where the parameters change. They go from an integer to an int64, or there's some stuff that went from on the T web browser from var to const or something like that, and that broke events. But it's a really, you know, once you have worked out what the issue is once, it's really, really quick to solve those issues. Yeah, so that short endeavor was really then, okay, and I just recently, somebody said, like, can you do C# and Visual Studio? I said, I'd rather not. If I have a choice, I'd rather not. It's a different world, and it's maybe I'm too old. I don't know. I get that feeling a little bit these days. Might be my age. Getting old and inflexible. I know everybody. You never know everybody, but I know a lot of people in the Delphi community, and it kind of is this family, and you never have this family feeling on the Microsoft side of things. It's even worse, I would say, on the if you ever did like Apple native development, it's like even worse, because like they I don't know a single community Apple developer during my time I did iOS development with Xcode. No, it's like, but Delphi is like this community where you know people, they have their blogs, and I don't know, it's different, and that's, I think, is the main reason why it's been around this long, for 25, right? 25, yeah, 25 years.
Yeah. Just
so
over.
That's the main reason. Yeah, I hate that it's 25 years. It means I started using it like 24 ago. And when I started using Delphi, I was 16. So it's shocking.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Good. So we will get 2 great books from you. What's your ETA?
I have no idea.
Okay.
As soon as possible.
So from the perspective of a customer, you just said you were 95% done, so you need like 2 weeks of proofreading. Maybe May. Oh wait, you're in lockdown. April. I'm kidding.
Yeah. So, also finding, I'm basically mostly retired. You'd think I'd have lots of spare time for doing such things, but I also live on a farm, which is just eats time like nothing. I've got, at the moment, we've got cows in a couple of paddocks because we've been working on a cottage. We've had a deck being built on that, which has stopped because it's everyone's in lockdown, so the builder. So and there's a shower going in, so the plumbing for that has not been finished. But it also means that we need to put in some fences, otherwise the cows can walk out onto the road potentially.
That's kind of strange here in Florida. What I never understand is there's no fences around places where cows are. There isn't.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. I've never seen it before, but.
Our cows.
I'd never seen it before, and then I came to Florida. No fences.
Our cows would just wander off. They'd say, "Oh, that's a nice looking tree," and go wander and eat some of that tree, and then carry on wandering, and that would never see them again.
Yeah.
So this afternoon or today, I'll probably be digging holes for fence posts. Mm-hmm. I've got about somewhere between 15 and 20 holes to dig, so that'll be fun.
It'll be fun. Yeah, it's still early in the morning for you. For me, it's like 5:30.
Yeah, that's about half 10.
Yeah, and it's still Monday for us, and you're already on a Tuesday.
Yes. Yeah.
Time zones.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, it made sense in a, I don't know, pre-internet, pre-flight kind of thing where it take hours and hours to go from one time zone to another, but now it's you fly across halfway around the world in a day kind of thing, and cross 12 of them. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I still prefer it to be 5 and getting dark though. I wouldn't have it like 8 in the morning and it's getting dark. Like there's people that want to suggest like one time for the whole world. I wouldn't want that.
Yeah. So metric
also
time.
Confusing.
I don't know.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, we're not there yet. We're not.
But it is a nightmare, in many ways. That for us programmers.
I didn't want to touch that subject because we would be basically be talking for the next like 3 or 4 hours, because I recently had a customer basically tell me that they bought a software that basically keeps track of your working hours, and they have people that work worldwide, So they have people that travel between countries. You know, they travel between Europe and the United States and Asia, and so this module, this time tracking module, was also tied to the payroll. And at the end of the month, they basically said that can't be. He has basically, people were working less than they were supposed to work, but they knew that they were there every day. They were just traveling, you know. So they contacted this software company, and the software company said, yeah, we know. But it's gonna balance out over a year or two. And I said, what? Yeah, they because like, let's say I can tell you this the easiest, because I'm from Germany, so I know the time zones between the United States. So if you start flying in Germany to Florida, and you start flying at 8 in the morning, you arrive in Florida around noon. You know, it only takes you like 4 hours. But you've been on the plane for 11, 10, 11, 12, depending on the time of year, hours. So what they did in their software, high-tech software, is the guy starts, or I start working at, let's say, 8 in the morning, and I stop working at 12. You know?
Yeah.
Or not, 12, because they always use local time. So they never had the real time span of anybody. And their reasoning was, and here comes the kicker, at some point this person would fly back. You know? And then when you fly back, so let's say I fly back from the States to Germany. Let's say I start here at in the evening, I get back in the morning and can work the full day the next day. You know, because it's ridiculous. So I just mentioned this to the people that basically bought the software. I said, did they ever get the idea to add time zones to the whole thing? Or where it was just a location, so you know, that's possible with computers? I said, yeah, that's possible. So they basically had their whole database structure, whole infrastructure set up without time zones.
Yeah.
And for that kind of software, that's not the best solution, believe me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you record everything in UTC and display it in local times is generally the...
Exactly.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, but, I mean, yeah, programming with time is hard. I mean, particularly if you're doing historical stuff, because there's been alterations and stuff, you know, even recently there's been leap seconds and things like that.
Yeah, your solution is even better. Just decide on one time zone that you store it in. But the problem is that they were like using web applications, and you know as well as I do, what happens if you travel with your phone? It sets the time automatically. So because of that, I would always use, for that instance, especially when using web applications, I would always use the time of the device, and I would also remember which time zone that was. So or as you suggested, convert that based on those two values, you know. But we're on the same page that, of course, you have to take the location where you are on this planet into account. You know, otherwise you can't calculate time differences.
Indeed. Not even thinking about daylight savings and what have you, which is it's caught me out a number of times on
yes
various things. I think there was a bug in Delphi for a while, I think, that had some issues with daylight savings.
Well, if they use the same library that Apple use, you know, the Apple iPhones had the same kind of problems years ago with alarm times, that the alarm either wasn't going off at all or it wasn't going off twice, and it's all based on the fact how people implement things. You know, let's say you have your you have your alarm clock set to 2:30 in the morning, and we're changing from summer to winter time, which is it's called in Germany. It's like daylight saving and daylight's, what's the other one? Standard time, daylight saving time, standard time.
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
I think so, yeah.
There is no 2:30 that day. It simply doesn't exist because you set the time from 2 to 3. So those phones never rang. I mean, it's it's a simple mistake to make. I mean, yes.
And you think about, this is the wealthiest company in the world, and if they can't get it right, it doesn't bode well for us individual programmers.
It's one of those things. When I speak or when I spoke in public, like at conferences, those are the kind of things that programmers get hung up on, though. Like, oh, how do you make sure if the time changes from this to that, and how do you make sure that you record that out? And between us, if we were setting up the software, we would probably never think about it, because that 1 hour once a year is usually for the software that we write not that important, because it's also during the night. You know,
indeed.
I would say for it's only relevant for, like, as you said, for a multi-billion-dollar company that builds like phones that we use 24/7. Of course, it's important, but it's but the thing is, as you just said, people get hung up on the fact that Delphi has a bug there. Okay, and that's the reason why I'm not using it. I mean. It's funny,
and it's probably been fixed since, but yeah, indeed. So
okay.
have you done much reading lately, in terms of having been too busy writing?
I feel kind of guilty, because the only thing I've read recently is my own books, proofreading it, you know, and at some point you just get tired. It's just you'll know this, like, if you've reached a certain point, you can't read anymore. And so I tried to read something non-technical. So I actually read the Game of Thrones series again for the first time. Read it. I watched it on TV, and then I read it. So I'm still stuck in that. But the next book I'm waiting for is already listed on Amazon. It's from Andrea Magni. He's also going to write a book about Delphi. That's definitely on my list. And then a book you just mentioned by Primoz about the design patterns. I wanted to look at that. And then I've already had a couple of ideas what to do next, so I'm working on that as well, text-wise. And so that's. I mean, you never stop thinking about what you could do. So that's, and of course I have to read a lot of documentation as my because of my position that I'm in. You know, if you do 5-minute videos, you better know what you're talking about. You know, if you do 5-minute videos of a whole, like, product that has a documentation of, like, for example, recently we did, like, the FNC web browser component, the advanced web browser component, a new browser component which is based on Edge Chromium, because it's actually an interesting topic. I don't know if you've covered that in your podcast yet, or YouTube, that Microsoft and Apple decided to get rid of the browser components. And so far, if you drop a browser component in Delphi, be it in FireMonkey or the VCL, you get, like, the Internet Explorer window, right? Which allows you to access, I don't want to say something wrong, but I'm pretty sure you could also implement some COM interfaces or ActiveX interfaces to do certain navigation things with it and get results. And that is all going to go away. And Apple did the same thing. They also said, like, oh, the browser component, it's out, we're going to replace it. And TMS implemented a new browser control, which uses Edge Chromium, which is based on Chromium. which is their Edge browser, Chromium based. So you can use that now, single control, and your browser applications can still be used in the VCL, FireMonkey, and with their framework neutral component approach. I don't know if you've looked into that yet. I mean, that's probably another hour we can talk. Those are components that you can use in the VCL, FireMonkey, on the web, also even in Lazarus. And you use the same control in all the frameworks, and they work. It's magnificent. So you only need to learn one control, basically. So if you have your browser control in the VCL, and it has the property, which is called URL, you can drop the same control, it has the same name, and it's the URL property, and the method is called this, and the event is called that. And of course, the advantage is that you can have one code base for not only for different platforms. If you think of FireMonkey, you can also have the same code base for different frameworks that you need to address. Like you can have the same code base for the VCL and for FireMonkey, for example, which is amazing. And then if you add the web, there's nothing that can make your source more portable and maintainable, because you have one source code for everything. These controls, the FNC controls, make that possible. And there's also a browser control in the FNC framework now, which allows you to use this Edge Chromium. And for me, the biggest feature of this Edge browser, Chromium browser, is it has support for certain file types, and PDF is one of them. So you can display PDF documents inside of your Delphi applications without installing anything, just the browser component.
Okay.
And then you have methods to load the file. And that is something I'm going to tease people a little bit. This is something I've got in the pipeline. Let's say you have a web service that delivers a PDF document. You can display that PDF document in your VCL, FireMonkey, mobile application, whatever, using that control, of course. So that's an amazing feature, because usually displaying PDFs is a lot of libraries as well. Adobe also has like their COM interfaces back in the day. I don't know if they still have those. I remember in Delphi 7 that I imported a type library from Adobe. I don't know if that's still possible with the new security restrictions that you have with PDFs. I don't know.
Not tried in a long time.
Me neither. That's why I said like Delphi 7. So I'm talking probably around 2000, 2001 here. And might have even been Delphi 5, which I've used for a long time. I jumped from Delphi 5 to Delphi 7. That was my jump. So this is the component that gives you so much. It's unbelievable. I mean, and you can load HTML content from streams. You can load HTML content from files. You can request it from the internet. And you even have an event that you can basically, you get asked by the browser control, do you really want me to navigate to that page? So that allows you to, it's one of the most common scenarios that I've encountered with customers when they had like an application built where you were supposed to be allowed to browse their web page, but not to wander off to other web pages. So that is something that you can implement very easily, because you get the before navigated. And I know that the old browser component had that as well, but it was through a COM interface, and it's not going to be available for much longer. It's going to go away. So that's, I mean, when you asked me for this interview, I said, like, how long do you want to talk? And I said, I usually talk this long, and I know myself.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like having a long, in-depth discussion with people. It's usually pretty good, and then you get past all the sort of all the pleasantries and what have you, and then into some highly technical topics, which is always good.
I'm happy to be back. if we don't want to take it too long.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we can probably wrap things up. So, so your book is TMS Web Core, available on Amazon.
Yes. Maybe you can add the links to the video if I provide them to you to make it easier for people.
Sure. I can do that.
And as I said, it's worldwide. So you can go to, I mean, if you're in Italy, you can go to Amazon Italy. If you're in France, go to France. That was the main reason for me to pick it. Because and another reason was just being blunt. I compared a couple of online printing options, and most of them basically have been bought by Amazon. So the market isn't as big anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. Sort of I would have thought that sort of on-demand printing would have picked up a bit more, but there'd be lots and lots of people doing it. But I suppose the ability to do that requires quite a lot of expensive machinery and what have you. So
yeah, this one was printed in Columbia, South Carolina, and this one too. And if you order them this is interesting. Okay, this is a press. This isn't self-published. Okay, because if you order, or people that ordered my book in Germany, it was printed in Poland. So it depends where you order when they print it, and that's actually why Amazon is able to offer these books worldwide, I guess.
Indeed. Okay. Well, good. I'll be ordering your book when as soon as I can get it delivered.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that's the thing that I wanted to have. You got a little bit distracted. I appreciate the support, and that's why I said I buy every Delphi book that there is, because I think it's important that we support each other and
read them as well. I mean,
and read them, of course. It's not just to buy them to have them, but to stay up to date on all the Delphi topics that are out there, and also basically show that Delphi is not still relevant, that it's very much relevant, because the discussion that there was online a month ago with this crazy TIOBE index or whatever it's called. Yeah. Let's not get into that. We shouldn't even mention them, because then they don't get any hits on Google. Yeah.
But I mean, it's good to have rebuttals.
Yes.
For such things, because people are going to come across that. And it is interesting the number of times Delphi has been pronounced dead, and it's still going. It's still going strong. It might not have the popularity it did when around Delphi 7, sort of Delphi 7 2007 kind of.
But I gotta be honest. I gotta be honest with you. When I entered the person-to-person community, when I went to the Netherlands and met people for the first time, when I met Nick Hodges for the first time, when I met David I for the first time, when I met Bob Swart for the first time, that was already the time when everybody said, we give Delphi another 2 or 3 years, and then everything's going to be .NET. And then Microsoft started to give away. What was exactly the time? I mean, I remember I got the CD on that conference for Microsoft Visual Studio 2005 Beta 2. They gave it away for free, and then they made the Microsoft Visual Studio 2005 Express Edition. And then that evening, when I was there for the first time, David I said to me, "Holger, don't worry. Native code is going to be around for a very long time. Don't worry about it." And back in the day, I went to college from 99 to 96, computer science, and then back to college for the PhD. But so all I'm saying is I didn't have the industry experience at all. So, and actually just during my PhD time, I learned about PLCs, like programmable logic controllers, that everything is native because you have real-time request times. And I always I always make the joke when I do a talk about like Java and .NET and like if .NET were used in most for the stuff that native code is used for, all the miners in the coal mine would already be dead because there's no oxygen there until the just-in-time compilers started up the fans that pushes the air into the mine, And Delphi, it's like time-critical things that .NET will never be able to, in my opinion, I have to say that, in my opinion, will never be able to compete with native code. And I've not heard so far of any programmable logic controller, be it Siemens, be it other companies, that there is anything with native code. They have interfaces for native code, and they might have like the development environments written in .NET or whatnot. But the code that runs on the machines, or just switch on your TV. Your TV, your satellite receiver, everything. There's no non-native code there. There's no .NET. It's all native. It's all, So
Indeed.
He was right.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I mean, he was back in the. I was still in the time when he was the chief evangelist from Borland when I talked to David that evening, and he said like, it's not going to go away. Don't worry, And he was right. I mean, and I think now what we see happening is that there is a reversal, because even Microsoft is like realizing, oh, maybe native code is the way to go. It's I don't know. .NET evangelists are probably going to oppose me heavily, but I think their strategy to do everything like a JavaScript and make it native using Electron also tells you something,
Yeah, and the frequency at which Microsoft deprecate things.
Exactly. I'll never forget LightSwitch. Was it called? I think it was called LightSwitch, wasn't it? It was like a development environment that you could use to. It was integrated into Visual Studio. You could add databases, and you could generate the user interface and all that kind of. It was kind of like, basic CRUD interfaces, but you could design the forms in Visual Studio, and it generated a light switch application. A Silverlight application.
Silverlight,
Silverlight, and then they deprecated Silverlight, and then the light switch team says, "Oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have Silverlight anymore." And then they tried to build a JavaScript web engine at the same time. They failed horribly, and then light switch was deprecated, and horrible. Oh, I think it was supposed to be the Fox Pro or whatever it's called, alternative. So it's if you've been in this world, it's great to be in because there's so much stuff available for free. But sometimes you appreciate to go back to the world where you know what it works like that you've learned like a couple of years ago, and can be sure that when you wake up the next morning, it's still going to work the same way.
Yeah. I mean, you can't build really large enterprise applications on frameworks that are going to just disappear on you.
Yes, exactly. That's I know one. I worked for a company that had a ERP solution that was based on what they did is crazy. Thinking about it, I wasn't making the decision. I came into the company when the decision was already made. Like they had a ASP.NET application that was basically delivered onto the employees to use for everything, like invoices, estimates, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, as it was written in ASP.NET, it was only compatible with Internet Explorer 5 at the time. And this application communicated with an ASP.NET application, and the ASP.NET application was connected not to the database using Microsoft technologies. No, they use Java and Hibernate. So they had a bridge between ASP.NET and Java and Hibernate. And the Java and Hibernate was then linked to either an Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server database. So you see where this is going. It ended up that the company was not allowed to upgrade their Internet Explorer, and that was even worse. The Java, there was like a time when Java was bought by Oracle, I think, right? I don't want to say something.
Yeah, no,
Oracle. Yeah, so they were bought by Oracle, and then they decided to change the serialization mechanism for objects. Something that would never happen with Delphi. I mean, let's be real. So they made this basic call. So, and as I just told you the story, so because of this, the web client was no longer able to communicate with the backend because the objects were serialized differently. And for that reason, they were not allowed to update the JavaScript library. So it's the Java library, it's not JavaScript. Be careful, it's Java, you know? And we all know the security implications if you're not allowed to update your Java libraries anymore. And it kind of shows you in what kind of scenarios you can basically write yourself if you have like people telling you, oh yeah, you can use ASP.NET and you can use this and you can use that. Think about it. If you had used Delphi with a simple database server, I mean, nothing of that would have happened, you know. And even back in the time, you had web solutions for Delphi at the time that would have worked, and even the database was a little bit. You had to go third party, I would say, because DBX never caught on. So you would probably back at the time would have bought like it was called AnyDeck, right? AnyDeck became FireDeck, right? Yeah, so
that's correct.
That's probably the route you would have gone. So perfect solution, all done. You know, but it kind of shows you what kind of crazy decisions were made. So in order to be using something that is considered the future, and then you realize you basically driven yourself into the corner there, because their client front end didn't work because Microsoft deprecated Internet Explorer. Their back end didn't work because Java was bought by Oracle.
Yeah. Delphi is pretty good for building large, stable applications. I've worked on quite a few now that applications are they're literally decades old.
I mean, Adrian from the TMS team, he's the guy behind FlexR. He had written an application way back. I think 96, 97 maybe. It's still being used. It's still being run. It's never been recompiled. I mean, it's out there, and it's still. And the key thing is, it's still being used, and it still works. Like, just think about this. This was like written for Windows 3.1, and the compiled application is still able to open a file on the file system, even though the file system that is being used now wasn't even available back in the day,
Indeed.
So that kind of shows you the value of being able to use that's actually the idea behind .NET, that you basically use like an abstract thing to, open the file, close the file, write this, write that, and the operating system decides like which method you're going to use. Yeah, but practice shows that Delphi has been doing a much better job, even though it's native code.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you there. If you'd written something, I don't know, 20 years ago in Visual Basic, and then you stayed the Microsoft route, Visual VB.NET, and then you probably would have had to rewrite it in C# because and then whatever frameworks, from WinForms to WPF or whatever. You might, in those 20 years, you might have had to have rebuilt it maybe 5 times or something like that.
I helped a student during his master thesis, and he wrote everything in .NET. And it was 2000, must have been, I think it was 2017 or something. And we wrote everything in WinForms. And no matter which version of Visual Studio came out or whatever, we had to make modifications every year that were not only related to the IDE, it basically was classes, functionality of classes, and I'm really not talking like simple stuff here. I'm really talking data type specific. That, for example, stuff like extension methods going away, or extension methods having a different name. Imagine toString being called sString all of a sudden. That kind of stuff. Just an example. It wasn't the case for .NET, but just to give you an example how basic the changes were. It was like really like, we called it toString. toString is actually confusing. Let's call it sString. That kind of S. That made so basically whenever there were changes, you knew that you needed to make changes to the coding and stuff. Of course, you can't usually just take it from one version to the other without making slight changes, but those are definitely bigger because the time between them is much, much closer. Like, I've read an article back in the day. It was in a Microsoft magazine, and even the top .NET guy in Germany, Holger Flick is his name, or Dr. Holger Flick, he basically said like the amount of code changes, updates, different versions has become problematic. It's not a quote, but that was the gist that I took away from it. He basically said it's become too much. Even I lose track of it, and I do nothing else from monitoring. That was basically the gist of it.
Yeah. I think we've got it pretty good in the Delphi world in terms of, there aren't too many breaking changes going on. I mean, even between some versions of Delphi, there's the DCUs are compatible, so they've been binary compatible, so which has been pretty good.
Yeah, between versions, yes. But I gotta be honest. If you do, I don't want to say professional, like if you do big applications, not as a hobbyist, you need the source. You can't compile against other binaries.
Oh, indeed, I agree. But certainly, I did appreciate it between Delphi 2006 and Delphi 2007. It meant that you just import stuff into the IDE and it worked. You didn't have to work out.
Yep.
All the dependencies and stuff.
I remember the discussions. That's all I'm going to say.
But yeah.
Because there was quite a few people that did not appreciate it that much.
Okay.
Because obviously, if you keep it binary compatible, you can't make any changes to any of the interfaces.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Okay. Well, should we wrap things up? It's been great talking to you, Holger.
Great talking to you. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, we'll catch up again at some stage, and I'll get you a link to a copy of my book, and you can have a bit of a read.
Oh, thank you. Same here.
Yeah,
and, have a good day. Don't work too hard. Planting those posts, and and to everybody listening to this, stay healthy. And,
stay safe.
Stay safe.
Yeah, keep your social distancing and all that kind of thing.
Drink a lot. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. I shouldn't say drink a lot. Yeah, exactly. As a German, you shouldn't say drink a lot. This is not beer. This is water.
Yeah, actually, I make my own wine, so I've got like a ridiculous store of
so hopefully
various
flights to New Zealand will get a little bit cheaper, so I can have some wine at your place.
yeah. So it's blackberry and apricot and
ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah. So yes, so I've been having a glass or two in the evenings and occasionally, but not really drinking all that much.
Okay, understood.
Okay, all right. See you later.